And our NFL analyst to start off the day, we have Louis Riddick here. How you doing, everybody?
Good, good.
Okay, let's get him going. I'm a high five.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
You get a finger point.
That works.
All right, let's get to the action from last night. The Browns handily beat the Steelers, but the win would be overshadowed by a fight that broke out in the closing seconds of the game in which 3 players were ejected. First, Steelers QB Mason Rudolph tried to pull off Browns lineman Myles Garrett's helmet, and in retaliation, Garrett ripped off Rudolph's helmet and then inexcusably swung the helmet and connected with Rudolph's unprotected head. Here's some reaction after the game.
That is embarrassing. What I did was foolish, and I shouldn't have allowed myself to slip like that. That's out of character, but a situation like that where it's an emotional game, like Larry said, and allow myself to fall into those emotions, with that last play and what happened. I hurt my whole team with what I did, and that could come back to bite us. And I don't know what kind of repercussions I face, but got to be better.
I don't know what the rules are. I don't know, but I know it's Bush League. I know he's, total coward move on his part. I get. I mean, it's okay though. I'll take it. I'm not going to back down from any bully out there. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Max, what's your reaction to what went down on the field?
Well, obviously there needs to be a suspension because Mason Rudolph needs to be suspended at least a game. Let's start with that. He was the one who started the fight, tried to take Myles Garrett's helmet off. I mean, he got underneath, tried to twist it off. Then Garrett's like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing. Okay, I'm going to take your helmet off. Then as Myles Garrett's being restrained by 2 of Mason Rudolph's teammates, Mason Rudolph, without his helmet, charges Myles Garrett. So Myles Garrett, as he said, foolishly swung with his helmet. By the way, it's in the rules. You know what happens if you swing with your helmet? Article 17 uses helmet as a weapon. A player may not use a helmet that is no longer worn by anyone as a weapon to strike, swing, or throw at an opponent. So what's the penalty for that, right? It's already in the rules. Illegal use of helmet as a weapon, loss of 15 yards, and automatic disqualification. So 15 yards, and Myles Garrett should be disqualified from the game. And I would also say, when you look at swinging at a guy's head with, unprotected head with a helmet, a 2 to a 4 game penalty, I would understand. There has been a totally hysterical reaction to this. And I think part of it's because the culture of, let me just take this put it into absolute terms, right? In terms of the danger, which has been overstated, what just happened and everything. In baseball, guy throws at another guy 100 miles an hour in the head. You know what? He gets a warning from the ump. In hockey, you swing at a guy's head with a stick. You might get a 25-game suspension. It's possible. In other words, like a quarter of the season, a third of the season, the equivalent of 2, 4, 6 games, something like that in a football suspension. But people talking about Myles Garrett rest of the season, kick him out of the league, send him to jail. Calm down. In a fight, if one person escalates and the other person retaliates, even if the retaliation is considered disproportional, we don't just look at the disproportional retaliation. Mason Rudolph was at the end of a game in which he stunk, 4 interceptions. The other team's about to win. The defensive end's on top of him. He's clearly frustrated. He tries to pull the helmet off. He gets retaliated in kind. While the other guy's being restrained, he charges them, and he gets swung at. Myles Garrett's right. It's foolish. You shouldn't have swung with the helmet. Everyone calm down. Myles Garrett, 2. You want to argue 4 games? Fine. Mason Rudolph, at least a game. Done.
Your position was asinine from the moment you said Mason Rudolph is the focus because he instigated it. That was asinine in and of itself. To sit up there and talk about on a day like today, this morning, that the first thought that comes to your mind is that the quarterback who is under the 260-pound defensive lineman that just slammed him to the ground because he tried to take off his helmet, I think that's utterly ridiculous. Now, let me get to Myles Garrett. I'm not saying Mason Rudolph doesn't deserve to be suspended because he does. What I'm saying to you is this. Myles Garrett is the focal point here. He deserves to be suspended for the rest of the season. He can't be seen again this season, and I predict he won't be. Knowing Troy Vincent the way that I do, covering him from his days in Philadelphia, knowing how principled of a man that he is and the way he takes things like this in terms of the imagery, the optics, the fact that it was on national television, the fact that you sat up there and it was the quarterback, no less, and you swung the helmet so violently at him the way that you did. And, oh, by the way, you connected. okay, considering what could have happened if that crown or that helmet had connected with Mason Rudolph and what that could have led to, there is no question that he deserves to be suspended for the rest of the season. As a matter of fact, let me state clearly for the record. I think Myles Garrett will be lucky if he doesn't get suspended for 14 games. I think he'll be lucky if he doesn't get suspended for the final 6 games of this regular season and the first 8 games of the next season. Now, that might be a bit too excessive. I think the 6 games, being done for the rest of this season warrants enough punishment. I'm certainly not advocating that he gets suspended for 14 games, but I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to rule it out with Troy Vincent. I'm not going to rule it out with John Runyon. I'm not going to rule it out with Derek Brooks. Not those guys that I've known for years. I'm not going to rule it out. Anything's possible except the notion that he's going to get off light. Yeah. That ain't possible.
I don't think 4 games is light.
Well, I'm telling you, it's going to be a minimum of 6. You can book it. He ain't going to be seen again this season.
And you think how many do you think?
We're talking about what should, not what will. I agree with you. There's a good chance that will happen. I'm talking about what should happen.
That's fine. I got it. The point that I'm trying to make is this. Let's go back and analyze not just the play, but the game. Myles Garrett was beating up Mason Rudolph all night long. The Cleveland Browns was beating them up as well. I mean, one of the hits on the receivers, a headshot, you knocked him out, you concussed him, you get ejected from the game. The Steelers were having injuries. James Conner got injured. Juju Smith-Schuster got injured. Another receiver with the illegal hit to the head they got beat up last night. And then legally, Myles Garrett was beating up Mason Rudolph all night long. It's 8 seconds left. It's 8 seconds. You won the game. It's 21-7. You wrap your arms around him after he gets rid of the football, and you drive your body into him. And when you're taking him down, that was he was going to get penalized for that play in and of itself. So after you do that, you're on top of Mason Rudolph, and he reacts, why? Damn, you beat us up enough. You got the game. The game is over. And now you're driving me into the ground, which is where the reaction came from. Not that it was acceptable, but that's where the reaction came from. And if you are Myles Garrett with DeCastro in your face, with Pouncey in the vicinity, you don't have to, you could take off his helmet because you upset at him, but then afterwards with 2 Steelers offensive linemen shielding him from you and you from him, you still take your helmet and swing and connect at his head. There is no excuse for it whatsoever. He's going to pay a price. There's going to be multiple suspensions because league rules stipulate, just like in the NBA, you can't come off the bench. You can't come off the sidelines in the National Football League. So you're going to get guys that are going to get fined. I believe Pouncey is going to get suspended. I immediately reacted after the game. He didn't even deserve it because he lost it at the time. He his quarterback get hit with the helmet. But thinking about it, the rule of the law, the letter of the law, okay, you got to suspend Pouncey for a couple of games probably. Mason Rudolph was an instigator to some degree. You might have to suspend him a game. We don't know what was said to Myles Garrett. Sure. The NFL is looking into that as well. But Myles Garrett, he will be lucky if he doesn't get 14 games.
Look, maybe, Mason Rudolph maybe did instigate the whole thing. And when they're on the bottom of the pile, they were wrestling around. He did have his hand inside of his helmet. And he was pulling at it, okay? But let me give you this, all right? So out in the regular field of play, all right, say a wide receiver and a defensive back getting into an argument, right? And there's jawing going on. And maybe there's a little bit of swinging going on. Maybe, you always see players grab each other's face masks and they're talking, they're jawing. And then the defensive back decides to enact justice on this guy. And he hits him with a headshot. Okay, he hits him with a headshot. The NFL doesn't care what preceded that as far as you jawing beforehand. Maybe they give you a warning, say stop talking and all. But as soon as we're talking about trauma to the head and taking headshots on people, they start jumping into action here as far as trying to quell that stuff. This guy hit another man with a helmet on top of the head. Max, I played with some of the most vicious individuals and played against some of the most vicious people to play this game and revere those guys. I promise you, the guys who were in that fraternity will say, that is a whole different ball game you're talking about right here. I don't care what Mason Rudolph was doing underneath there. I don't care what he was doing. You guys were down on the pile. He was pulling at your helmet. I'm pulling at yours. All that. That happens in games. I get that. Look, I'm all for the brutality of the game. Hard hits. I've been one of those people who've spoken out and said, look, the game is much different now. It's much different than when I played it. Look, I have neck surgery to account for it. I played the game in a much different way than it's played now. But it has to be played differently now because the league is facing lawsuits. There's people right now who are after the league for their money because of the fact that they say, look, you didn't let us know the trauma that can happen because of the way we used to play the game. There is no way they can let a guy get away with striking another man's uncovered head with a weapon.
Okay, now you're talking
There's
about,
no way.
You're talking about the optics for the league and everything.
But no, that's not just optics. And Max,
okay,
it doesn't care. I don't care about other sports. The other sports aren't facing multi-billion-dollar lawsuits.
So you're talking about the culture of the NFL. The reason so many former players and executives like you and others, who I've heard be very strong against Myles Garrett, is because it's so antithetical to the culture of the NFL, where it's a dangerous sport to begin with. You take care of each other in some way, even if you're on opposite sides. And Garrett has to pay at minimum a stupid tax, right? You don't swing, especially when a scrub is going at a star in any sport. Stars should back away, because if you both get, and you're in the same division, that's bad. Mason Rudolph's a bad player. Myles Garrett's a good player, so that's a stupid tax to begin with. On top of that, with all the talk about head trauma, you swing the helmet as a weapon, which no one's ever seen before like that. I get it. Mason Rudolph also pays a stupid tax. This didn't happen in a vacuum. He entered the helmet, not just twisting, he was trying to yank it off. He brought that into the equation. Myles Garrett was just more successful at it. Then it could have been over. But Mason Rudolph, without a helmet, charged at Myles Garrett, who was being restrained.
Max, he approached. What's he going to do?
He charged that.
He ran towards him. That happens all the time. What was he going to do?
That's not Myles Garrett's concern.
Did he swing it? It should be.
If you see someone charging at you and you're in a fight and their boys are holding you back, you might swing.
You have a choice. Okay, you're right. I'm Myles Garrett. I'm 6'5", 285. And here comes Mason Rudolph jawing at me about the fact that I just ripped his helmet off, and I have his helmet in my hand.
Okay? I think he's jawing. It looked to me like he was trying to attack.
Oh, come on, man.
It looked to me like he was trying to attack
Mason Rudolph
him.
ain't going to do you-know-what to Myles Garrett.
Well, you think because Myles Garrett wins the fight, that means he can't defend himself?
Yeah, okay, so I'll tell you what then. The next time somebody charges at me, I can just pick up whatever's near me and just clock you over the head.
If someone charges at you, correct.
So let me get this straight. So Max Kellerman has a weapon in his hands.
Mm-hmm.
Max Kellerman is 250 pounds. Let's get the little kid over there that's about 6, 7 years old that comes at Max Kellerman, because that's what the hell Mason Rudolph was.
That's a mischaracterization.
It's not a mischaracterization. That's how ridiculous you sound.
You sound like Mason Rudolph's a little kid. A big grown man. He's a big guy.
Compared to Myles Garrett, he's not. Compared to Myles Garrett, he's not.
So because he's smaller than Myles Garrett, he gets to attack with impunity?
You ain't the only one that gets to talk here. The fact of the matter is, you sat up there, he's a quarterback. He's got 2 offensive linemen in Myles Garrett face to protect him. Yes, he's coming at Myles Garrett, but he's shielded away from him by 2 offensive linemen at the moment trying to calm things down. And Myles Garrett takes his helmet and takes Mason Rudolph's helmet and swings it and connects to his head, which is
think of how ridiculous what you're saying is. Think of how ridiculous. Could he have connected if Mason Rudolph wasn't charging at him? If Mason Rudolph was over there, he'd hit the air.
Hold on, here, look, let's just do this.
All right.
Look at the video.
Look at the video.
Look at what Mason's doing. Mason didn't come at him like cocked, ready to swing on him. He came at him, jawing at him, Max. I mean, that's the reality of it. The reality is, I promise you this. If you asked Myles Garrett,
I just saw him put his right hand on him.
Oh, come on.
What's that? What's that?
Do you think Myles Garrett was worried about what he was going to...
Wait, that is not for you to judge.
Okay, so wait.
Mason Rudolph charged him and put his hand on his arm.
Okay,
if I was listening to Max Kellerman right now, if I was Troy Vincent and I was John Runyon, I'd add a couple of more games on the damn suspension to Garrett just because of the idiocy of coming out of your mouth. That's ridiculous. The man is 260. It really with a helmet.
What do you think Mason Rudolph weighs?
He has his helmet on.
I think we're moving away from the action by focusing on intention and focusing on size. If we just look at the action alone, and I point this to Max, it's nice that you're able to sit here today and say it should only be fewer suspensions, but that same exact action, what if it was a different optics or result? What if he cracked his skull open or knocked him out right on national TV live? Would you still say that
well,
same
for the
take?
same reason, no one seems to be upset at Mason Rudolph. You're right. It's human nature for me to say, oh, look at the consequence.
It wasn't that big a deal, right?
And so the consequence is so large that now I change my position, which is what's happening to everyone about Mason Rudolph. If you took away Myles Garrett's reaction, then you'd say, whoa, Mason Rudolph was trying to take his helmet off. Mason Rudolph charged at him. No one wants to talk about that because Myles Garrett's reaction people fear was disproportional. Article 17, I will refer back to it again. There's already that in the rules in the event that something like that happens, 15 yards and a disqualification. It's already in the rules.
Hold on, Ross. I got a question. What about the notion, I'll take away size?
Compared it to hockey players swinging a hockey stick or baseball players throwing a 100-mile fastball and hitting a guy, but those are game actions. This guy literally was on the field, not a game action, took a helmet and swung it at an unprotected head.
I would say if
How does
throwing a
that compare?
baseball in the game action has a worse consequence most often than some behavior like that.
It's a game action.
Okay, I could think about non-game actions in other sports probably where a guy's not going to get suspended for the rest of his career or for a year. But I want to get back to you with the one guy has a helmet on, one guy doesn't.
Sure.
The reason that Myles Garrett had a helmet on and Mason Rudolph didn't is because in the action that Mason Rudolph initiated, Myles Garrett was more successful. At that point, one guy has a helmet on, one guy doesn't, because the guy who started it wasn't as good at taking the helmet off as the guy who finished it. But at that point, it could still be finished. Mason Rudolph does not have to, whatever you think his intention was, well, what was he going to do? That's not for you to decide. At that point, that's for Myles Garrett to decide. If I see a dude coming at me and I'm being restrained, I'm not worried about what everyone else is going to think. All I know, and I'm mad too.
Okay, well,
he doesn't have his helmet on. That's his fault.
Just for clarification,
Yeah.
basically what you're saying is the only reason why Myles Garrett should be suspended is because he violated the rule, the letter of the law. Other than that, you have no problem with his actions. Is that what you're saying?
Incorrect. I would say also this. You don't swing a helmet at a guy's head. I mean, that we can all agree upon. I start by saying what I said because the reaction to Myles Garrett has been nearly as disproportional as his reaction to Mason Rudolph, or maybe more.
Well, that's only as it pertains to assault. Like people that saying that he should be arrested for assault. I agree
Or
with you
even
there.
kicked out of the league.
No, kicked out of the league. But
Come on.
in terms of a lengthy suspension on the part of the NFL, there is no question he deserves that.
You know what, though? Here, look. If, and I know we're going to say, but it didn't. But if that helmet was cocked a little bit further,
Thank you.
And he cracked his head?
and Max, it's not unreasonable to think
Finish the
that he could have
statement.
split his head open,
Yes.
knocked the boy out, and he's laying there, and paramedics are coming on the field. Then would you say Myles should be suspended more than 4 games?
Yeah, I probably would. I have to be honest about that. No, but
But listen, hold on. Would you then say, well, after we hopefully Mason Rudolph is okay, you're suspended too because you started it?
yes, as a matter of fact.
All right, fine. Do you think that now that he didn't get hurt egregiously and life-threateningly, that the punishment should be less for Myles Garrett?
Yes, it's in the rules. It's already in the rules. You're saying, Max.
So the whole part about head trauma and player safety doesn't mean anything.
No, you're asking a legitimate question. What you're saying is, Max, what if there was all this extra stuff that happened as a result that the rules don't anticipate? Because already they've anticipated this and they have a penalty, 15 yards and disqualification. You're saying, but what if the result was so out of proportion to what they imagined? Wouldn't you want additional punishment? The answer